Hey, this is Mr. G here. You notice behind me, it's got a little sign that says Teacher Page. I'm cleaning up after teaching an ESL lesson to a little 5-year-old Chinese kid in Beijing. Cool as that? Kind of weird, actually, putting up my stuffed animals. Um, we're going to have another edition of Moderately Deep Thoughts about something. Today I'm going to discuss Psalm 3. I was reading it, and it spoke to me. Something I need to say, though. Um, this series of videos, and I don't know how long it'll last. I always start things, and they don't go on forever. It seems like something else always pops up. But I'm being much more deliberate in my reading of the Bible and trying to spend alone time with God because my life is getting busier. I've been self-employed for a lot of years now, and one thing I've learned about being self-employed, the secret to making it work for me, is I got to have money coming in from lots of different little sources. No one thing does it all for me. It's not like going to a 9-to-5 job at an office. I enjoy this kind of life, but it gets kind of crazy. And the crazier it gets, the temptation is to put away anything that doesn't have to do with making money. And sometimes, and for me for a long time, that included Bible time and prayer time. The truth of the matter is, the busier I get, the more I need Bible time and prayer time. So God is reminding me that I need to be much more deliberate with this, and that's what this is all about. Second thing. This is a devotional approach to these Psalms. I'm not doing anything really incredibly academic. When you read something devotionally, whether it's a poem, whether it's the Bible, when you read it devotionally, you read it and you pay attention to your heart and your thoughts, because if it impacts you, it's going to stir things up. And sometimes what it stirs up is directly related to the topic of what you're reading, but sometimes it's something else entirely. And that doesn't make it any less important. So what I'm doing is I'm reading, and it stirs something up, I'm going to talk about it. Third thing, this is the way I reason through almost any problem I face in my life. It took my wife a few years to realize when we discuss things that I'm not making wild pronouncements or plans. When I'm discussing when I'm thinking my way through a problem, I have to think my way through it verbally. And so it's like I say the words and I put them out there in front of me, and then I can weigh things and choose things and not to do things, do this, don't do that, turn here, don't turn there. I have to verbally walk my way through things, and that's kind of what this is. I'm verbally walking through things. So I'm going to read the psalm first, and then I'm going to share a few thoughts. This psalm really did impact me today, this morning, before I started my lesson with this young Chinese kid. Let me read it to you. Chapter 3. It's a psalm of David when he fled from Absalom, his son. O Lord, how many are my foes? Many are rising against me. Many are saying of my soul, there's no salvation for him in God. Selah. Selah means think about it. So, many are saying of my soul, there's no salvation for him in God. Think about it. But you, O Lord, are a shield about me, my glory and the lifter of my head. I cried aloud to the Lord, and he answered me from his holy hill. Think about that. Selah. I lay down and slept. I woke again, for the Lord sustained me. I will not be afraid of many thousands of people who have set themselves against me all around. Arise, O Lord. Save me, O my God. For you strike all my enemies on the cheek. You break the teeth of the wicked. Salvation belongs to the Lord. Your blessings be on your people. Selah. Think about it. Now, this was an incredible time in David's life. He'd been king. He had a son, Absalom. This son turned the entire kingdom against David. David had to vacate his throne. He had to run and hide. His own son was chasing him down, perhaps to kill him. and his whole son was leading the nation in rebellion against David. I can't think of a more incredibly awful thing than to know that the son you raised hated you enough to want to kill you. I'm so grateful that my son and my daughter are two of my best friends. I can't imagine what it would feel like if my son and daughter hated me that much. That's what David was facing. And he had to go away. He's one of Israel's greatest kings, if not the greatest king of all time. He had to vacate the throne that God gave him. And he had to go run and hide. How awful. How incredible. And yet, in the middle of this awful, incredible time, he could say things like, "But you, O Lord, you're a shield about me. You're the glory and the lifter of my head. I cry to you, you answer me. I lay down, I sleep, I wake again because you sustain me." It's like David has this immediate thing facing him. But he's looking past it. He's got an eternal perspective. He knows to whom he belongs. And he knows that beyond this incredibly terrible thing is something great, grand, and wonderful. He says, "I'm not going to be afraid of these thousands of people who have set themselves against me all around. Arise, O Lord, save me." Salvation belongs to the Lord. Your blessing be on your people. Selah. There's a very big challenge here. Every time you hear that word Selah, it means think about it. The people are saying, no one's going to save him. There is no salvation. There is no salvation for him in God. Think about that, David. David responds, "God's a shield, my glory, the lifter of my head. I cried to him, and he answered me from his holy hill." You think about that. David was very confident in his God. Now, how does this apply? This is the picture of a man who has an eternal perspective. He knows that everything that's happening on this planet, this little mud ball we call Earth, no matter how significant it is here on this mud ball that we call Earth, in eternity, it doesn't weigh that much. I know this family. I'm not going to mention their names, but I'm sure they'll recognize themselves when I talk about them here. They recently suffered the death of a dearly loved family member. A daughter and a sister. And I have watched them grieve this last year. And they are grieving. They're very sad. Tears come at the snap of a finger. A memory of something that reminds them of her. It's tears at the snap of a finger. But one thing I have never heard them say, "Oh, what would she have accomplished if she was still around? What great things would she have done if she was still around?" I'm sure that's true, and I'm sure maybe they've thought that. But what I've heard them say is they're grieving the loss of someone they loved. They miss her. They miss her company. They miss her laughter. They miss all the things about her that brought them joy. But in the very same instant, they recognize this fact. She was a believer, and she is with the one who created her, and she is no longer suffering. They recognize the fact that in the eternal view of things, their daughter, their sister, is in the most incredible place with the God who created her. They don't understand why she left this early. Nobody does. Death's a mystery to many of us. But what's on the other side of death should not be a mystery. If you have an eternal perspective, you realize that death is not the end. Death is a door. David was very possibly looking at death. His own son wanted to kill him. Army was chasing him down. He had to go run and hide. He could have died. But he knew who his God was. And he was confident that God would save him here or God would save him there. Either way, he's saved. For those of us who follow God, those of us who are Christ followers, we know that death, as mysterious as it is not the end. For those who feel that death is the end of all things, then everything in this life is of great importance, massive importance, because this is all you got. But if you are a Christ follower and you realize that when God calls you home, however he does it, that you just walk through a door from here to there and a new adventure starts. That's why I like the Chronicles of Narnia, because that's what Narnia is a picture of. It's an allegory of going to heaven. You go from here and then you're there. My mom and dad used to have this little thing that they do. Mom would ask Dad, "Where are you going?" He said, "Oh, just around the corner." And they'd all laugh. It was just their little thing. And when Dad died, it's very romantic. He died in my mother's arms. He was having a heart attack, and he was leaving. And she's holding him in his arms. They were actually at a hospital emergency room. She held him in her arms. And one of the last things he said to her was, "I'll see you around the corner." She said, "Where are you going?" He said, "Going around the corner. See you later." Those were the last words my dad spoke. He had a picture of eternity where his heart attack, painful as it was opening the door to the next thing. David was that confident of this, that he could say, "Lord, you're a shield, my glory. You're the lifter of my head. I cried aloud to the Lord. He heard me from his holy hill." In the midst of all the terrible things that were happening to him, David could still look past that. That's the confidence we have as believers. There will be times when it will look like the whole world is against you. If you have this eternal perspective, the world will say to you, "There's no salvation for him in God. Think about it." And you be like David. You'll go, "He's my glory. He's the lifter of my head. I cry to him and he hears me." You think about that. Psalms 3. Good stuff. Moderately deep thoughts. Mr. G out. Have a great day. Bye-bye.